A reading from the book of 1 Kings. Today is October 25th. Our reading from 1 Kings is chapter 11. King Solomon loved many foreign women in addition to Pharaoh's daughter, Moabite, Ammonite, Edomite, Phoenician, and Hittite women, from the nations of which the Lord had said to the Israelites, "None of you shall join them, and none of them shall join you, lest they turn your heart away to follow their gods." Such Solomon clung to and loved. He had 700 royal wives and 300 concubines, and his wives turned his heart away. In his old age, his wives turned away Solomon's heart after other gods, and he was not as wholeheartedly devoted to the Lord as his father David had been. Solomon followed Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Phoenicians, and Milcom, the abomination of the Ammonites. Solomon did what was displeasing to the Lord and did not remain loyal to the Lord like his father David. At that time, Solomon built a shrine for Chemosh, the abomination of Moab, on the hill near Jerusalem, and one for Moloch, the abomination of the Ammonites. And he did the same for all his foreign wives who offered and sacrificed to their gods. The Lord was angry with Solomon because his heart turned away from the Lord, the God of Israel, who had appeared to him twice and had commanded him about this matter not to follow other gods. He did not obey what the Lord had commanded. And the Lord said to Solomon, "Because you are guilty of this, you have not kept my covenant and the laws which I enjoined upon you. I will tear the kingdom away from you and give it to one of your servants. But for the sake of your father David, I will not do it in your lifetime. I will tear it away from your son. However, I will not tear away the whole kingdom. I will give your son one tribe for the sake of my servant David and for the sake of Jerusalem, which I have chosen." So the Lord raised up an adversary against Solomon, the Edomite Hadad, who was of the royal family of Edom. When David was in Edom, Joab, the army commander, went up to bury the slain, and he killed every male in Edom. For Joab and all Israel stayed there for 6 months until he had killed off every male in Edom. But Hadad, together with some Edomite men, servants of his father, escaped and headed for Egypt. Hadad was then a young boy. Setting out from Midian, they came to Paran and took along with them men from Paran. Thus they came to Egypt, to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, who gave him a house, assigned a food allowance to him, and granted him an estate. Pharaoh took a great liking to Hadad and gave him his sister-in-law, the sister of Queen Tahpenes, as wife. The sister of Tahpenes bore him a son, Genubath. Tahpenes weaned him in Pharaoh's palace, and Genubath remained in Pharaoh's palace among the sons of Pharaoh. When Hadad heard in Egypt that David had been laid to rest with his fathers and that Joab, the army commander, was dead, Hadad said to Pharaoh, "Give me leave to go to my own country." Pharaoh replied, "What do you lack with me that you want to go to your own country?" But he said, "Nevertheless, give me leave to go." Another adversary that God raised up against Solomon was Rezon, son of Eliada, who had fled from his lord, King Hadadezer of Zobah, when David was slaughtering them. He gathered men about him and became captain over a troop. They went to Damascus and settled there, and they established a kingdom in Damascus. He was an adversary of Israel all the days of Solomon, adding to the trouble caused by Hadad, as he repudiated the authority of Israel and reigned over Aram. Jeroboam, son of Nebat, an Ephraimite of Zerada, the son of a widow whose name was Zeruiah, was in Solomon's service. He raised his hand against the king. The circumstances under which he raised his hand against the king were as follows. Solomon built the Millo and repaired the breach of the city of his father David. This Jeroboam was an able man, and when Solomon saw that the young man was a capable worker, he appointed him over all the forced labor of the house of Joseph. During that time, Jeroboam went out of Jerusalem, and the prophet of Ahijah of Shiloh met him on the way. He had put on a new robe. When the two were alone in the open country, Ahijah took hold of the new robe he was wearing and tore it into 12 pieces. "Take 10 pieces, he said to Jeroboam, for thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, I am about to tear the kingdom out of Solomon's hand, and I will give you 10 tribes. But one tribe shall remain his, for the sake of my servant David, and for the sake of Jerusalem, the city that I have chosen out of all the tribes of Israel. For they have forsaken me, they have worshipped Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Phoenicians, Chemosh, the god of Moab, and Milcom, the god of the Ammonites. They have not walked in my ways, or done what is pleasing to me, or kept my laws and rules as his father David did. However, I will not take the entire kingdom away from him, but will keep him as ruler as long as he lives, for the sake of my servant David, whom I chose, and who kept my commandments and my laws. But I will take the kingship out of the hands of his son and give it to you, the 10 tribes. To his son I will give 1 tribe, so that there may be a lamp for my servant David forever before me in Jerusalem, the city where I have chosen to establish my name. But you have been chosen by me. Reign wherever you wish, and you shall be king over Israel. If you heed all that I command you and walk in my ways and do what is right in my sight, keeping my laws and commandments, as my servant David did, then I will be with you, and I will build for you a lasting dynasty as I did for David. I hereby give Israel to you, and I will chastise David's descendants for that sin, though not forever. Solomon sought to put Jeroboam to death, but Jeroboam promptly fled to King Shishak of Egypt, and he remained in Egypt till the death of Solomon. The other events of Solomon's reign and all his actions and his wisdom are recorded in the book of the Annals of Solomon. The length of Solomon's reign in Jerusalem over all Israel was 40 years. Solomon slept with his fathers and was buried in the city of his father David, and his son Rehoboam succeeded him as king.